Hello, and welcome to our Automation and Policies Masterclass webinar. I'm Andy Schwartz, Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Pulseway, and today we'll be taking a look at the nuts and bolts of how to use automation and policies to maximize efficiency and unlock huge time savings. But before we get started, I'd like to give you a quick tour of our console. On the bottom, you can find some buttons where you can join the chat with other attendees, ask us a question, or request an account review where you can meet one-to-one with a member of our team to learn even more about our policy management capabilities. On the right-hand side box, you'll find helpful product-based PDFs and links to join the conversation on our forum or social media channels. Let's go over the agenda for today. First, we'll give you an introduction to policy management before walking through our enhanced policy management engine. Next, we'll take a look at the upgraded capabilities and show it to you live in a demo. After that, we'll give you a sneak peek of some new capabilities coming soon before moving into a question and answer session where you can interact with one of our solution engineers. Let's get started with an introduction to policies. So first, I'd like to provide you a little bit of a refresher on policies and what they're all about. So essentially, policies are what you use to govern your IT environment. They are the rules of the road, if you will. And as you can imagine, this is super important because it governs how specific machines will behave and interact with the environment. Policies allow you to determine how machines will be configured and monitored, and getting it right is absolutely crucial to successfully managing an IT environment. And getting it right can yield major benefits for your business. An effectively planned and executed policy management solution will give you more control and help you save time, thus really driving your productivity. If you're an internal IT team, you'll be able to accomplish more with the same team of professionals. And if you're an MSP, you'll be able to effectively serve more clients. Now let's take a look at the new policy management capabilities in detail. First, I'd like to introduce you to the policy management engine at the core of Pulseway. It really is the driving force behind policy management in this solution, and we're proud to say that we've greatly enhanced the engine itself, which lies at the heart of Pulseway. We've looked at the challenges that the industry faces and have developed new functionality around the needs of partners and done so in a way that is intuitive and seamless. We've delivered a new level of control, allowing our partners to manage their environment with a detail not seen before. And what's more is we've designed these enhancements in a way that allows Pulseway to grow with our partners. These enhancements are designed to enable our partners to scale their business. So if you're an MSP, you can deal with more clients effectively. If you're an MME, you can deal with large and complex environments more easily. Now, at a high level, these new capabilities include the all organizations capability, the device targeting capability, the ability to utilize cumulative profiles, extensions, device cards, and at the end of our presentation, a sneak peek into new root policies that are coming soon. Let's start with the all organizations capability. Now, previously, what you had to do was go organization by organization, and in MSP terms, that's client by client to make changes. And obviously, this sort of slowed people down. It was a real challenge because it chewed up time and it slowed down those partners that wanted to grow quickly. And so what we've done is we've solved this challenge based on what our partners have told us, and we've made Pulseway very easy to work with. So now, with the all organizations capability, changes can be made quickly one time, and that change will apply not only to current organizations, but also all future organizations. And this really helps drive an environment of consistency across an MSP in the way they manage their clients' infrastructure. And of course, this really helps them scale their growth. Another feature I'm excited to tell you about is device targeting. It's completely new to Pulseway, and it brings some great capabilities to the table. What device targeting is all about is using specific device attributes to assign policies to a specific subset of devices. So it's all about including and excluding the certain types of devices and the way that you want to manage them. So device attributes that can be used in device targeting include the device type, the operating system type, and the device manufacturer. So this really allows you to get very specific in terms of what you want to do, but to do so across many machines all at once. An example of this would be creating an extension and selecting Windows as the operating system type, and then that extension would apply to Windows devices and only Windows devices across your whole infrastructure. This can save a ton of time for internal IT departments dealing with large environments that have a variety of different systems, or MSPs dealing with many clients all at once. Another fantastic feature I want to tell you about is cumulative policies, and it's also totally new to Pulseway. Now, in the past, all policies were non-cumulative, and what this meant is it limited technicians' flexibility to make specific changes or implement enhanced monitoring. Now, with cumulative policies, certain profiles can be assigned multiple times to the same device, or layered as the terminology goes. And this is a huge step forward for monitoring. So now technicians can match the appropriate level of monitoring for the appropriate role or device. So it's all about being very deliberate and very targeted in your approach to monitoring. So a real world example of this would be specifying a specific level of monitoring for something like a print server, an SQL server, or an exchange. So being able to do this and being able to target your monitoring and specify what you want to monitor on specific machines is far more efficient for technicians. And finally, all of this doesn't change the non-cumulative capabilities that have always existed. And so IT techs, of course, still have the ability to put non-cumulative profiles in place. And this is great when profiles can't be layered. For example, when putting together device configuration. So next, I'd like to tell you about extensions. And extensions are really cool because they allow you to deliver what I like to call specificity at scale. So what you can do is use extensions to modify a policy for a specific subset of devices while not modifying the overall parent policy. So this is great because you can make small adjustments to a policy for a specific subset of devices. So if something critical pops up, you can just create an extension. And it's really cool because not only is it saving IT techs time, it's meaning that they don't have to go and create new groups, move systems around, create whole new policies. It's basically just editing one policy and adding simple extensions. So it's a really cool way to manage very precisely. The next part of policies I'd like to tell you about are device cards. Now, device cards make it really easy, all within that single pane of glass on the Pulseway dashboard, to see what policies have been assigned to each device. They're accessible from the left-hand navigation bar, and they're really easy to find. And so, at the click of a mouse or a click on your smartphone, you'll be able to quickly see what policies are interacting with devices and troubleshoot more effectively. You'll be able to diagnose the root cause of issues. You'll be able to see, for example, maybe if the wrong policy had been applied to a device, or maybe a policy was incorrectly configured to begin with. And from there, you'll be able to easily edit the policies that are attached to the device and resolve issues proactively. So what does this all mean for partners? Essentially, what this means is it's a new level of control that puts system admins in the driver's seat. So policies now work alongside automation to make it easy and efficient to manage your IT infrastructure. And what this really does is it changes the way that you think about policies and what you can do with them. You can be very specific in your approach and very tailored in the way that you use policies. You can modify them and augment them for specific applications. And so now what you can think about is building policies in a very deliberate way. I like to say that you can think about policies now almost like Lego blocks. You can put them together and assemble them exactly the way you see fit. And so these changes usher in a new way of control and the ability to scale further faster. For internal teams, it becomes easier to get more done with less IT tech time and effort. Internal IT teams will be able to manage larger and more complex environments than ever before. And for MSPs, they can manage a larger number of clients more effectively, which allows them to grow their business. Now let's take a look at a policies and automation demo. I'll hand it over to Ken.
Welcome to today's webinar. In this section today, we will take a look at how our monitoring policies and how the automation module comes to the picture, where we will be discussing towards how these global policies or root policies can be assigned and how we could create these extensions so that as an IT administrator or an MSP, you have better visibility around it, giving you more confidence around these things. Now, looking at a device for an example here allows you to quickly be able to see the existing policies that have been assigned to these devices. One of the things that we've got some good feedback around it is that we can easily navigate towards these policies right from this side. Now, when we're talking about the monitoring type of policies, we're looking at two types of aspects there. One is the device configuration policy, and the other one is around the monitoring policies. One is to do with the settings of enabling remote desktop to hiding some of the options under the device card that we look at. When I say device card, these will be some of the aspects that could be hidden for some of the devices or all devices that we look at. Now, let's just assume that in a situation as an administrator, I'd like to monitor a specific set of items for this device, and I can quickly see as to what policies have been assigned here, and I can navigate all the way from here towards it. I can quickly see as to what sort of event logs that are monitored around these lines. Now, looking at more on a line of how we could assign them and how we get to create them, all of that is available for us within our policies section. This comprises of policies and profiles. The profiles are more around the lines of how we create these extended set of items around the lines of setting up monitoring, performance monitoring, etc. And that can be added up towards a policy that we look at. One of the features that is quite helpful and useful around the lines is the ability to define this on the all org level that we're looking at. So if you've got multiple organizations, you could have a baseline policy that has been assigned and that could take over for all the organizations that you have altogether. However, if you're looking at more of a targeted set of devices, we can always make changes around it. So for an example, where we're looking at more of a baseline policy that is a device config or monitoring that we look at altogether. Now, to begin with, let's focus a little bit around a baseline policy towards the device configuration. Notice that I could quickly see a set of devices that are assigned to it, or I could create an extension out of it that could be purpose-built for an items towards specific devices. Now, noticing towards how we create these extensions around it, this allows you to see the targeted set of organizations, site, and the agent groups that are associated. From here, I could define that I only want to monitor the Windows set of devices in it, and I could filter it down by targeting an OS specific that we look at. So in this section, let's say that we're looking at enabling user permission for the remote access on those devices, meaning that as and when I remote in, the end user should receive a prompt, and this is mainly around the lines of these C-suite set of users to exec team, finance team, etc. that we look at. So I'm creating specific around them and know that the targeted set of devices that they have is old Windows 11 or maybe MacBook, etc. that we look at. And based off which, I could create some various amount of profiles that could be added up. Now, one of the things that we looked at is the remote control option. Of course, there's other ones too, but let's quickly talk a little bit around the remote control. Now in here, I would want to enable remote control for all of these devices, but at the same time, I need to ask confirmation before I log into that session, meaning that if nobody responds, we could easily deny it. And of course, we do have options that can automatically log these screens when we disconnect those remote sessions. Now, back in the time, in order for me to make changes, I would have to go all the way back to make changes to those profiles. But in here, I could easily click on this redirect option that allows me to be able to make changes around it. This time around, I don't necessarily need auto lock screen because these users are constantly working. So maybe for them, I don't necessarily want to have that, and I could just save it accordingly. Now, going back towards the policies here that we have, we looked at how the device configuration comes with the picture, but let's take a look around the lines of monitoring that we look at. The concept remains the same, and it's more like an inverted pyramid that you can think of, allowing you to have a root policy at the top, and then you could create filters within that. And you don't necessarily have to go to the all organizations tab to manually assign them once again. So looking at these policies, notice that we have created an extension right here for this device. Again, you get a quick visibility around it, giving you more information about what set of devices that we have, and I could even filter it down based on various different filters that has been offered. Now, looking at it, this will become more like a baseline policy around the lines for monitoring for me, and this could be for all workstations. That includes laptops, desktops, Mac computers, etc. And based on which we can create extensions. So, as an IT administrator, it would be of more of one organization that we look at, and that would have more amount of sites and agent groups that we look at all together. On the other side, as a managed service provider, you would potentially have multiple clients that you cater to, and then maybe if you're looking at a standard set of monitoring around those lines that is targeting based upon these SLAs, you could easily create something similar to this and you could name it accordingly. Now in here, we're looking at more of just targeting these Windows 11 devices accordingly from this baseline policy that we have. And I could easily see that whether it's been inherited from the top level. So now I can easily just have an extension or just click on edit here to understand. So notice that the policy type that we have is monitoring, allowing me to see as to what is the context. This is the organization side and the agent group that's selected. You could also see multiple organizations if that is selected in this aspect. But in here, I do have Windows 10 devices and some Mac computers around it, but this is specifically targeting around the lines that I would like to do it for a Windows 11 machine. Now, if you notice that we can easily define the OS type, whether it's Windows 10, 11, 8.1, although not a lot of users tend to use 8.1 anymore, but we do have users that use Windows 10. And yes, we have the Windows 11, most of them now. So select that accordingly, and if there's need, you can always target based upon a manufacturer too. This could be in a situation where you're managing a set of devices where you had a one rollout of devices in the org that was potentially HP, and then you had a contract renewal with your partner or with the vendor directly, and that has moved towards that has transitioned towards more of Dell laptops. And then you know that you have both, but these laptops have sometimes have issues around something specific around those lines. And you're looking to monitor around those lines there if there's need, maybe like an event log for that matter. So you could define more like a vendor-based version of it that gives you a specific target around those lines. That becomes a bit more easier around that. Now let's take a look at more on the lines of the profiles that we see. With the profiles around these lines, you notice that I could assign additional profiles that have been added up, like folders here. I could search for it. Say, let's say we are looking at more of the monitoring lines, and I could assign any of the profiles that are available here. However, this gives you a better visibility that this has been inherited from the existing one. This technically is talking about that this is already associated there because this is the inherited baseline policy that we have. Now I have an existing one already set up, and with our platform, we're looking to offer some additional set of templates that are going to be readily available for you as we progress, um, bringing in new versions of the RMM. To notice that there's security events that can be added up that have been created, and we could notify you accordingly. And we could also define and click on edit here that allows us to define what type of alerting mechanism that we need, whether it's going to be a critical, elevated, normal, or low at the same time. Now, alongside to it, we can look at some additional options too, like a highlighted features. Is it support for Mac operating system? Event logs aren't, so obviously we wouldn't have it. But then again, what else are we looking at? So we've got statuses around it, where we can receive offline notifications, IP address changes, etc. The user setting is mainly revolving around the Pulseware manager. We no longer need that because most of these options are readily available for you within the web console. Now, let's have a look at one of the aspects around the storage, so C drive and the rest of the partitions that we look at. And it could also define a specific set of monitoring templates that we look at. If there's need, I could add up some additional set of monitoring policies or rather monitoring profiles associated to that. And that could be done right from this side. And I'm going to include this basic Windows service notifications right within this side here that allows me to easily monitor that right within this section. And notice that this is a very good example, by the way, because we, we would need to monitor all the services that are automatically started. However, there are a few set of services that may not be important. So you could create something like this that could just say, I could exclude it. It's faster to exclude a certain set of services versus to monitor all of them. However, if there's a need, you can always redirect right from the side that allows you to quickly make changes around it. And you could easily add up some additional services like a VSS router service. I think that exists here already, but that is part of the automated service. But here's just an example. So manually looking to add it, I could add potentially additional services, some backup services that I'm monitoring, all of it with some description there. Now, this is where Pulseway shines. The idea here is to remediate and automate these aspects as we progress. They are designed to be, sorry, so they are designed to be intuitive. And the idea here is to make it easy to use and offer and come in with more of a minimal amount of learning curve at the same time. This is more on the lines of expandable solution designed to allow you to automate across the whole environment altogether. Now, we are constantly monitoring these devices, and how we get to monitor it and remediate it is where the picture comes in, or rather, remediating side of it. This is where the automation workflows will shine. And of course, there's capabilities around scripting that we look at, and also the lines of how we can associate a workflow at the same. Now, taking a quick example around it, let's say we are doing more on the lines of monitoring and we had this a potential service like a spooler service that we are monitoring, and that has gone down. Rather than as a technician or a MSP, you don't necessarily have to come back and fix that issue. Instead, also you can remediate some of these actions and let you know if that hasn't been fixed. We can generate a notification or maybe have a ticket created around it. So taking a look at more on the lines of the workflows, you get to see two types of workflows that we have. One is self-remediate, which is to do with notifications trigger. The other one is more on the lines of an ad hoc scheduled version that we look at. Also talks about the context and the status of it. When was it last modified, the next execution date, and the times that have been executed there. So looking at one of the print spooler service that we have, let's quickly click on edit or on these lines. Now, in this situation, we're looking at more of a service that is stopped, and we have a spooler service that has been added up by default. I could easily define to start a service automatically, or I could define some progressive aspects around those lines, where I could easily clear those print shadow or the print spool files from the printer's cache that helped you in printing and running this optimally around those lines so that these spooler services don't constantly fail or printer loading, etc. that we look at. So as and when the service stops, we create a spooler service definition as a condition. And of course, we can add some additional ones if required, and it could be targeted based of an org, etc. that we look at altogether. Of course, there's a lot of options that we can think of here, but really, in a situation or in an example, the service stops, we create a condition, and then we go by executing a PowerShell command that allows you to clear up those SHE files that we look at right within the site, and we could easily create a variable. Now, this variable can be leveraged in additional conditions, and we will talk about it as we progress. So this is a name that we have defined called SHE files removed, and we want to run this as a system or maybe logged in user for that matter. Recommended again will be on the system level. That will be good enough. And then likewise, we are taking off the principal service. Files are the same. The cache has been deleted, and then we're logging this information. And here's where those variables come in. I could use this hash sign right here that allows me to use these variables that we created. And that could easily be add up into more of a message as a log that we look at the same time. These logs can be found within the audit trail if needed. And then notice that once we cleared it, we checked upon the logs as to what happened, and then we started up that service automatically. Now that the service has started, we're going to go one step further by defining what happens around this line. There's an incredible value that brings in with the newer set of options within the workflow where we can get device values. And this is not only with the spooler or service, but we're looking at values about querying data around if the user is logged in or if user is active, has user confirmed and registry key exists, etc. that we look at. So there's various amount of readily available values that you can use. So in this case, we wanted to use a service. We want to query the name and we're going to call this as spooler and then we're going to put this name as spooler service here. Make sure that we just don't type the name and move away from it and this is going to throw you an error. Instead, always type in spooler and just hit the enter key and that should be added up like this. Once confirmed, we're looking at more of the options as we revolve around the condition. What was the variable value that we're looking at? Is spooler service running? When we query the spooler service, if the value is a yes, and then we go to the next step, we're going to write log saying that the sprint spooler cleanup and remediation service has been successful. If needed, and then from here on, we can delete this notification. And it's instant, by the way. The workflow is created. It's not going to take that long. We will test this out too, so that we'll give you a brief idea. So we delete this notification right here. So the technician doesn't really need to know. However, if there's a need, and if you have an integration with our PSA platform, you can just create a ticket that has been successful, and that kind of adds up to your ticket count if there's need. However, in a situation where the spooler service did not restart post clearing everything, which is rare, but there is a possibility, we can always create a PSA ticket that talks about the variable value of the service name, and if not, and if needed, we can also define the name of the PC here. That's it. And the moment I save it, I'll have the ability to run that. Let me quickly open these services right here. So we're looking at the print spooler service. Then we've got a couple of notifications that we look at all together. Let's just mark this as red so that we don't get confused. So let's drop this service right away. Now, within a minute, we should have a notification that gets triggered, and this will automatically clear that out. I highly doubt because it is going to be successful, and then it is automatically delete that notification. But we get to see this workflow history as and when it is executed around these lines. And while we wait for a minute till the service gets started, let's have a look at some of the other aspects about the workflows. One of the workflow that we spoke of is more around the lines of remediation, and the trigger type is going to be revolving around the notification side. Now, let's just say that we're looking into it, making a meaningful way of deploying an application right through our platform. Now with Pulsewave's platform, you do have an option to upload files right here within the manage file sections. It allows us to host those applications right from the side if needed. And this could easily be used within the workflows and part of the more of ad hoc or schedule. Now, in this example, we're going to talk about an application called Lightshot. It's one of an interesting one because it captures some amazing screenshots as and when required while you're demonstrating. No branding is such here, but this is something that I personally use. But to give you an idea here, that has been created. So let's have a look as to how this workflow looks like. Now, this is something I've made it as more of an ad hoc version of it, so not necessarily scheduled it. However, this could also be a scheduled workflow if required. And notice the trigger type already changes here from notification to the ad hoc and scheduled. And I could go beyond this and define a context right within the side here, which could be associated towards the device or a scope that has been created. We've got all systems and some of the scopes that are created to define all of it right within the side. In this scenario, we're going to be running it around one of the machines that we look at the same time. So let's have a look at that. Plus, to give you a quick idea, this is quite a helpful version of it. When we look at something called device list, this adds some immense amount of value if you're looking towards pushing out some information, maybe to Azure, etc., based upon the runbooks. That can be added up as more like a device list card that could be ad hoc or scheduled at the same time. But then let's come back to what's more on the lines of the deployment that we could look into. With this one, you notice that I set this up as more of an ad hoc, allowing me to define the app that we're looking at. So you could upload this applications that can be available right through the manage file section. So something that one of the trick there. So if you're looking to do more of like a file transfer, from one machine to another. If it's a file that is just available with you and you don't necessarily want to remote, you could also use this, not just for deployment. I could just use a write file and just put the path where I would like to store if needed. So in this situation, notice that these two commands is going to be more than sufficient. Sorry, let me not confuse anybody. If you're looking to just push a file onto some place, onto a different machine, define that machine, upload the file, and you have the option here. One. Now, let's say you have that file available on the cloud, maybe onto some public storage, on any of these HTTPS address that we're looking at. I could easily just replace this right within the site, and instead I can use a curl command. And this could be, let's say that the application is hosted onto the Postgres website. Um, Downloads, this is usually a default page that we look at. Let's say, and I'm going to add. All right. And now I'm looking to forward this file onto some amount of machines or to a specific device. Could be a large file as well. They could define this and say I'm going to put it onto a C drive. And then let's just create a folder called temp. And that's it. I could just put in that application name that could reside. Right, so that's just about pushing a file out in the background without even remoting in. However, if you're looking into what's more of a deployment of an executable file, it can be uploaded right there, or it can be used more like a curl command to fetch it from one of those websites and execute that. Either we could do it more like a shell command, or we could use a PowerShell if needed. Each application has its own install argument. So please make sure that you go back to the vendor's website, check upon their documentation, see what are the commands that are supported there. So if you keep this file as a default path that we see here, so and this is going to be a local storage, and that is targeting to a C drive program files, Pulsewave folder slash the one of the download section that we look at. However, you can always define the section right here where you could just download that file onto a C drive, and then you can use these command lines so far. And I could define these results too. So this is one of the variable options. Once again, we're going to talk about. This is the name that I want to receive. So um, test deployment status for light LT. I'm just going to type something like this. So again, one of the names that you could define based upon your statuses. And this can be executed again by logged in user, the console logged in user or a system. Recommended is the always systems, but it depends on a scenario that we look at. Now, around these lines, what we've done here is that we've captured the variable. If the installation status is true, I could delete that temporary folder directly. And if the file was located under the temp folder, I could easily delete that and drop an email to maybe the admins, letting them know that the status has been successful altogether. And likewise, they can write logs saying that is installation status with the variable value and the variable value for towards the deleted temp files outcome. And this way, whenever I'd like to run this, so any schedule or ad hoc can be run right here. So you'll always see a play button that's available for you. I click on this and I will see that trigger coming in. Now, let's go back for a second. We checked upon one of the workflows around the principal service. We never saw the notification because it must have restarted the service and deleted that notification accordingly. All of this information can be seen right within the site. Let's have a look at the principal that is started. And to confirm, here's my workflow. And then it went all the way like from this corner around with the execution for a PowerShell. And we went towards the value that we look at, and then that has been successful. And then we deleted that notification. The amount of time it took is a couple of seconds that we see here. Now, in order for me to understand this better, and if I want to check the logs, if that is something that I need to do, those write logs that we did, this is available for you right within the audit trail. And I can use this category around these lines. So any categories for managed files that were loaded, etc., anything that was done, and then maybe we're looking at some workflow actions. I could easily see that right within the site. So we've got these, one of the aspects, workflow actions that shows failed. Of course, his lighthouse light shot is is installed already on my machine. And then print spooler service was successful right here. But export this information if needed in a CSV format. And this will stay forever with you as long as you have access to the console. Now, looking at just the workflow history, this is going to give us a meaningful amount of data. It matches up to the audit trail to notice that it failed here. So the value was not true. It tried executing, but that didn't go well. But so we went all the way towards sending out an email here. There's a cross because we don't have this mail address at all, but we've got the outcome that we defined. So the outcome was failed. So we documented that within the history, and we ended up the workflow as failure. And then in the history section, it tells me clearly here what the status looked like around it. And likewise, for the print spoiler service, that has been successful at the same time. And that's how powerful our automation module is. And of course, there's a lot more that we can accomplish, but this is just a good understanding and gives you a deep dive towards one of the workflow aspects that we look at. I hope this session has been helpful. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.